To come out and go to the ballpark before the week's over, I'm sure. The Yankees coming to town this weekend. The Orioles trying to climb back into this thing with a myriad of problems. In the meantime, the Ravens are heading down to the Bayou for a meeting, the fourth and usually insignificant preseason game with the New Orleans Saints down in the Big Easy. This guy is the sports director at WWL AM/FM, as well as a sideline reporter for the Saints down in New Orleans. He is Christian Garrick. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Christian Garrick. That's Christian with a K, and Garrick, G-A-R-I-C. And we welcome him in. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on once again. And, of course, it's always around this time that these two teams usually meet in the preseason. But, yeah, it's good to get this one. I want this one over with, to be honest with you. I'm ready to get the regular season on.
Well, it's a little different, right, with Breeze this time around because the team, let's be honest, the Saints have stunk, throughout August, and there's a lot of nervousness going on around about how this team's going to perform. And certainly the offensive line's the biggest question, but I think the defense traditionally has been a huge question mark. But seeing Drew Brees play a fourth preseason game, that kind of speaks for itself now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it hasn't happened since 2006 when he first came here to New Orleans along with Sean Payton. So, it speaks to the fact that the Saints are certainly desperate for momentum headed into the the regular season and that opener against what I think is going to be a very good Oakland Raiders squad. And they want some rhythm. They haven't had that. I mean, quite frankly, they've been beset by turnovers, penalties, and the inability to protect Drew Brees and the inability to establish a run offensively. They're just not very good right now. Now, that could change quickly in this offense with Sean Payton, with Drew Brees. They've got the skill set players to be explosive, but the offensive line is just atrocious. They can't decide whether Andrews Pete's a right guard, a left guard, a right tackle, or a left tackle. Heck, they might even try him at center or tight end at some point. I don't know. Look, that just speaks to some of the issues that they've had along that offensive line, and they signed Khalif Barnes yesterday, and I'm always weary whenever teams start discarding a player and you're one of the first in line to grab a player that's been discarded off another roster. It's usually a good indication that your roster is just not very good. Now there are the rare exceptions that you get a guy that was released from a team because of different reasons.
Well, Paul Kruger's running around this week too with your organization, and we know him well. And Cleveland released him, and there were some angry words on Twitter. And who knows how much he has left in the tank at this point? But I know the Cleveland Browns need good football players. I know that much.
Yeah, and look, he's in today for a visit with the Saints. That just goes to show you again. They traded for Chris McCain yesterday, the defensive end with Miami. They gave him a conditional seventh round pick, and then they're bringing in Paul Kruger, who the Saints expressed interest in and made a run at when he was originally a free agent a couple of years ago. So I would be shocked if he doesn't end up signing New Orleans, just because I think they're going to put the full court press on him and try to get him in there. And that's the issue on the defensive side of the football, is the inability to get after the passer and affect the passer in a pass rush. And they're really thin now at cornerback with the release of Keenan Lewis, and then Damian Swann, their fifth-round draft pick a year ago, who played a significant role on that defense. Well, he's in Philadelphia this week getting some exams done. He has a lengthy concussion history. So they're looking at playing on week one. Think about this now. In just a base defense, they're going to be playing a second-year player in P.J. Williams at corner, who's by all intents and purposes, he's going to be a rookie because he redshirted last year. He was on injured reserve, so that's basically a redshirt. And then they have Devontae Harris, an undrafted rookie free agent cornerback out of Texas A&M. And then they got King Crawley, an undrafted rookie free agent out of Colorado. Behind him is Damian Swann. So they don't have a lot of depth there. They're going to be playing with some mighty young players in that back end.
He is Christian Garrick. He covers all things Saints football down on the Bayou at WWL AM and FM. For Drew Brees, I mean, I can't believe we're sitting here talking about him still being the quarterback and Peyton still being there. It looked like Peyton was going to be out. Now there's talk about Brees. This is the end for him, and teams out there like the Broncos and the Cowboys and other organizations that feel like they might be built to win right now. It doesn't feel like Drew Brees is going to be sticking around New Orleans, because it doesn't feel like the Saints are going to give him 3 more years at the age of 37 or 38, right?
No, it doesn't feel like that right now, but I mean, things could change. Look, I think the Saints are being pretty smart with a 37-year-old quarterback. You saw how fast it went bad for Peyton Manning a year ago.
But you've also seen how well it's hung on for Tom Brady, though, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Look, I think that they're playing a little bit of Russian roulette here. Okay, if he has a monster year, which I don't think he's going to because of this offensive line. But if he does, then he's going to drive that price tag up. There's certainly going to be a market for him. And then you pay him. You're going to have some cap room next year. Then you pay him for 2 years, 3 years. I think I'm beginning to question, hey, if Drew Brees wants his legacy to be, hey, I have won multiple Super Bowls, I wonder if he feels like it can truly happen in New Orleans and he might need to go somewhere else to win another Super Bowl.
And he wouldn't be the only veteran guy that they build statues for that happens to, right? But, I mean, he is a statue guy there. He's at the top of the Mount Rushmore, even higher than Archie Manning, dare I say, right? But, I mean, that's who he is there. We went through that here with Ray Lewis. I mean, maybe one day we'll go through that here with Joe Flacco. Johnny Unitas went and played for the Chargers, and that was 40 years ago, man.
Yeah, Look, if Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, and Brett Favre can play for their unoriginal that's a bad term.
Unoriginal.
If they could play for another franchise aside from the one that they established their dominance in. I mean, because for the most part, do you think of Drew Brees as a San Diego Charger or a New Orleans Saint? So that's where he made his money. That's where he made his mark. That's where he carved out his legacy, was with the New Orleans Saints. But so did Brett Favre in Green Bay. So did Joe Montana in San Francisco. So did Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. But if it can happen to those guys, absolutely it can happen.
But it's a tough sell to the fan base, though, right? I mean, it really is. Like, talking about, hey, maybe we should deal Drew Brees right now, that's heresy. It's got to be, right?
Oh, it's sacrilegious. I mean, come on, you can't mention that. I tell my audience all the time, look, cheer for the team. The players come and go. You're cheering for laundry in the NFL. It's what you're doing.
You are.
Because they come and go so quickly, and Drew Brees, there's going to be a day. I broached this subject during the offseason. I was like, have you thought about what life would be like without Drew Brees, like as a Saints fan? Have you begun to digest that? Because that day's not too far off, I don't think.
Well, and then they start to name the 19 quarterbacks between Archie Manning and him, right?
Right, exactly. And it's not pretty.
It's not pretty, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking Jim Everett, and I'm moving backwards. So, my
Heath Schuler. I mean, come on. The Billy Joe Tolliver and Billy Joe Hobart, Aaron Brooks, Todd Bauman.
Bear.
None of those names really strike any kind of confidence with you.
He is Christian Garrick. He does all things sports down in New Orleans. And, hey, I saw that on your Twitter that you're a former United States Marine and Semper Fi. It's part of your Twitter, obviously part of your life. The Kaepernick thing. Look, man, I haven't been the outrage guy, and I don't sit here taking phone calls anymore from outraged people. I can be outraged by stuff every day. And people have asked me about it on social media. I did not serve. I know plenty of people that serve. I stand. I take my hat off. I salute the flag. I travel. I'm going to be in Germany all week this week. I understand what it is to pull a passport out. I've been to China. I've been to Cuba. I've been all over South America. I mean, I know what the world looks like a little bit, right? So I respect the people that fight for our freedoms here, but I also respect the freedom to say, I don't agree with that. So I'm not a guy throwing the tomatoes at Kaepernick, but I question how he's going about what he wants to go about, and understanding also that he's never going to work again. I mean, I get the feeling that the other 31 owners and certainly the coaches have all stood up within the first 48 hours and said, our guys stand for the flag. That's the way we do it here in Washington. That's the way we do it here and wherever. But I also respect and same thing John Harbaugh said, I respect that he's dissenting, but I can't be outraged. Honestly, Christian, I'm not outraged by anything. I mean, I'm a little more outraged by who's running for president in this country in general than I am about and I've said this B-list quarterback, which is, to me, B-list celebrity, which is what Colin Kaepernick is at this point. But I'll leave it to you, and I know you'll have a take on it, and I certainly respect your take given you're serving the country. And I've seen a lot of outrage in a lot of places the last couple of days.
I wouldn't classify me as an outraged guy over this. I will say I think you and I see the same result here, or see eye to eye, in the sense that I think it was a poor choice of venue and a poor way to voice your displeasure about I think a very important issue in this country. Now, I just feel like, because I was in the military, and it's all about how you perceive and what you see the flag to represent to you. And to me, it's one of those deals where it's sacred. You can't touch it. you don't touch it. You don't touch the national anthem, and you don't touch the American flag. Now, is the social issue that Colin Kaepernick is protesting very real, and do we need to have dialogue about it? Yes, absolutely.
I thought his 18-minute, soliloquy there, I'll give him points for that. Most of what he said made sense on some level to a large segment of people who would understand, right?
Yeah, look, but here's my issue, is that I wonder if he could have chosen a different platform, Twitter, press conference, what have you, a statement, a Facebook post, to get this message across. And I know that when you're in protest, the way to affect change is to have a very visceral response.
And you know what the visceral response is? You're going to piss people off. I've been on the radio 25 years. I have pissed off people for 25 years for simply just saying what I think, right? I mean, and that's America at this point. So, that's why I'm getting old, bro. My wife's almost died twice in the last 3 years. It takes a lot to kind of get me to the outrage point at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and look, I know that there are things, I know now it's coming out about how the original national anthem had some very negative things about slaves and the death of slaves, et cetera. And I think that's tragic. Look, I think that we have a very dubious history in this country when it comes to race relations that nobody should be proud of. However, that it's not going to be erased. I want to talk about what's going on now, not 1814 when the national anthem was constructed. And albeit nobody should be proud of that. However, we can't go back and fix that right now. We can fix how we address it and how we go forward.
Well, I think one thing Colin Kaepernick should be proud of 4, 5, 6 days into this thing now, we're all talking about it. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that's the only way these things get brought to light. So, for that, I'm appreciative for his antic. Don't agree with it. Not going to fly off the handle. I'm certainly not going to join him. I will join the debate. I will join the conversation gladly. But I'm not going to use the national anthem in a sit-in to protest many things about this country that I don't like. I'm leaving this country this week, and as this plays on the radio, I will not be in this country, but I appreciate this country, and I'm from this country, and I support this country, But the flag thing for me, it is different for me than it is for someone like you that is, bared arms and gone and fight for guys like me, quite frankly.
Yeah, look, it's just, for me, it's just one of those deals. You just don't touch it, man. And I might be wrong.
And I wouldn't be a guy that would touch it. I wouldn't be.
Yeah, I know that the American flag doesn't represent just the military, right? It does, but when I think of it, I think of honor, I think of courage, I think of freedom, and I think of the sacrifices that people made to have that freedom. And that's also a double-edged sword as to why Colin Kaepernick can say and do these things, because he lives in this country, opposed to if he was in another country and voiced his displeasure like that. I mean, he could be exiled. He could be executed in some countries. So that is the beautiful part about living in this country, is your protection of freedom of speech, et cetera. And you don't have any retribution from the government. However, that doesn't absolve you from public perception retribution either.
Or from your employer saying, I don't need that circus in my town, right?
Right, especially when they have other opportunities to cut you because you're behind Blaine Gabbert.
Understood. Hey, man, speaking of football players and guys, Ben Watson got injured here last week. I know you guys have had certainly the injury bug from your first-round draft pick in Sheldon Rankins. We have a situation on Thursday where we're just trying to get Perryman on the field for the first time like ever. Most Ravens fans don't even know what he looks like, and he was drafted a year and a half ago. But the Watson thing and the preseason thing and what's happened with Romo, and now here what's happened with Ben Watson, who I know everyone in New Orleans would have great affinity for. We had already fallen deep and hard and like with him as well. And we had set up a bone marrow swabbing, and he gets injured on a non-contact. But these preseason games, and I know we're coming down to play this last one, the whole notion of these preseason games is it should be an open debate amongst fans and amongst the Players Association and amongst the coaches who don't want to, quite frankly, put their Drew Brees on the field on Thursday night.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw Coach Harbaugh. I think it was Coach Harbaugh that said that there are other ways as coaches we can get our guys ready to play games. In particular, I think that applies to veterans more so than the younger players. But what if you are a New Orleans Saints team that has so many young guys that you have to evaluate? And it's really difficult to simulate an exact game situation. Now, while some teams can get close to replicating that game, you still need that game. I think that they can come up with a creative way, though. I agree with Coach Harbaugh. There's a lot of smart coaches in the league. The problem I see is, are the owners gonna get off that money? They're not going to take that loss. They're
going to get this thing to 18 games somehow, and I think it's not even that's a non-starter for the players. It's not how much will you pay us. It's we're not doing it, and I think that's where the stonewalling is really going to be. Well, then we're going to play these preseason games, and every year we're going to piss and moan for a couple of weeks, and some Romo's going to get hurt, and life will go on. But until Jerry Jones gets pissed off about it, which. Yeah, Jerry carries a pretty heavy stick. There's one team in L.A. and one not in St. Louis and two in Oakland and San Diego because of Jerry, apparently, right? That's how much influence he has.
Yeah, and not to mention Robert Kraft. If those two guys, those two power broker owners get involved and get exercised, then, yeah, you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of that movement. But I don't know. I think that there are certain veterans, like Breeze, like Romo, like Flacco, those guys, they need, a game, a preseason game, or just 10 practices, and I think they'll be good. There are others, though, that need every rep in practice and every rep in the preseason. So I just think it's a really, really slippery slope argument to have.
Hey, man, it was always great having you on. I appreciate your work. We're going to be following you down there on the Bayou at Christian Garrick. That's KristianGaric. We'll also retweet it out. He is the sports director at WWL-AM-FM and sideline reporter for the Saints. Hey, man, I'm not making this trip. I'm going to be across the ocean with my wife for a couple of days here, creating some miracles over in Germany. But, hey, I'm going to miss the muffalettas. I'm going to miss my walk through the lower garden over there to the Surrey Juice Bar and the shrimp and grits and the fried shrimp. Just let me talk about it for a minute, Christian. But we're going to get down there soon, man. Go have a burger at the port for me, man.
Yeah, man, I will. And let me know the next time you're in town.
That sounds like a challenge.
Yeah. I'll take you up on that and enjoy your trip overseas, man. Good for you guys.
Hey, man, we appreciate you. Thanks for coming on, Christian.
All right, yep, take care.
Great debate. Christian Garrick, also former United States Marine. I should say thanks for the service. Semper Fi to him out on his Twitter, and you can go follow him down in New Orleans at WWL4 and the sports director there. You can find me in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault. We are headed off to Germany for some miracles. We'll have some cool stuff up on our Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, all the fun social places that we kind of hang out at WNST. You can also get our morning newspaper delivered to your email inbox every morning at 7 a.m. That's brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com as we travel halfway around the planet. Well, not halfway, but a good quarter of the way anyway. We almost made it to Russia. We just stopped off in Germany and made a right turn. And last but never least, any breaking news that's going to happen, I promise you there's going to be breaking news this weekend because the Ravens are going to be cutting guys. The Orioles are going to be adding guys with the roster, so make sure you get on that. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Meanwhile, Luke will be at the ballpark all week. I'll be reporting. I'll even be doing some radio from Germany, probably some Facebook Live as well. If you're out on social media, come meet the man that saved my wife's life twice. We're looking forward to meeting him as well. And I hear Billy Joel's going to be pretty good on Saturday night in Frankfurt as well. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports. .net. We are headed into a huge weekend of college football and, of course, Orioles baseball and, of course, the Ravens getting ready for the Buffalo Bills next weekend here. But college football rules it. We've talked a lot about the Terps this week and their prospects. But we're going to go around college football now with one of our defending champions. We welcome Aaron Torres, college hoops and football analyst at FoxSports.com, back onto the program. Week 1, here we go, man. Let the games begin on Saturday, correct, Aaron?
Yeah, Nestor, speaking of let the games begin, I got to say, man, it's been a long time. I thought you lost my phone number. I don't feel like a defending champ right now.
We didn't play any games. We didn't miss anything. We haven't missed anything. They stopped playing basketball like in April, and nothing's happened yet. But that's going to change on Thursday night. I know.
You mean you didn't want to talk satellite camps for 4 straight months? That wasn't in your wheelhouse?
You know what? I was going to call you last week and talk about that Cal whatever game was over in Sydney, Australia that I caught at midnight last weekend. But I'm like, my wife's like, they're playing football already? I'm like, yeah, they're playing in Sydney, Australia as well. But this week it's kind of weird with a lot of these big site, big games. We're playing the Saints this week down in New Orleans in preseason, and everybody down there is all gassed up about this LSU game. I know anybody that's in the Dallas area, they got a huge football game there at Jerry's World. Just a big weekend all the way around.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I've said this throughout the last probably month or so, Nestor, is, every year we always have 2 or 3 or 4 good games. We always say, oh, this is the best opening weekend ever, and it's all hyperbolic, and we always say the same thing. This year really feels like it, though. I mean, you're talking 5, 6, 7 games that are not only huge marquee games, but in the case of at least 2, 3, 4 of them, really could have long-term national championship implications. The thing that makes college football so unique, I would argue, the greatest sport, is because the regular season every single week matters. So whether you look at Ole Miss, Florida State on Labor Day night, Georgia, North Carolina, USC, Alabama, you mentioned LSU, Wisconsin, there's other ones that I'm missing, Auburn, Clemson, they all have meaning. You can't take a week off. You can't take a night off. You lose this weekend, your season could be over before it really even begins.
Well, everyone expects USC, and they expect USC to be a good team this year. Everyone expects them to be 0-1 on Saturday night, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, the problem with USC specifically is I think that they have the talent of a national championship contender. I actually think they're a lot better than people realize, but their schedule is brutal. Just by the end of this month of coming September, they play Alabama on a neutral field. They play at Stanford and at Utah, 3 of the most physical teams in the country, 2 or 3 of the most talented teams in the country. So in the case of USC, their season is kind of might very well be over before it begins. The crazy thing with them is, like I said, they've recruited really well and have a lot of talent, but just the scheduling gods were not in their favor, not only with the out-of-conference stuff that they can control, but in conference, the Pac-12 offices did them no favors either.
Whole state of Alabama realizes that it's like a national holiday, right? Because Auburn's playing an hour later against Clemson. And, the one thing we're definitely going to see on Saturday are these Heisman candidates all over the place.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's going to be the obvious ones like a Deshaun Watson, like a Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma playing Houston, but it's going to be other guys too. And, the great thing about the Heisman is now I think this is a year where kind of one of the big names, be it a Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Mayfield, Watson, all those guys, I think one of them is going to win it. But the great thing about the Heisman is most years a guy pretty much comes out of nowhere and throws himself in contention. A couple years ago we saw it with Jameis Winston. Opening night he was nearly perfect against Pittsburgh on Labor Day. You go through last year, Baker Mayfield finishing, I believe, 4th overall. J.T. Barrett a couple years ago finishing 5th. So to me, that's the fun part of the Heisman. It's not the Christian McCaffreys, the Leonard Fournettes, as much as I enjoy watching them. It's who's going to emerge. We've seen in the past, as I mentioned, Cam Newton coming out of nowhere, Robert Griffin III, Johnny Manziel, certainly, and I'm curious to see who that guy might be this year.
We always know the Oklahoma-Texas game is a big one, but how about Oklahoma going to Houston? That's a noon kickoff on Saturday. A lot of people with a lot of love for Houston in that program last year, and they kind of got screwed in the early going, and we talk about these teams that can or can't win a national championship. Some might not be allowed to play in the Final Four. This would be a great stride for Houston to kick their season off. We talk one of these teams going to be 0-1 on Saturday.
It's incredible. Yeah, no, and Houston, for people who don't know, look, this is no gimmicky program. First of all, they don't certainly have the depth of an Oklahoma or Texas or even a Baylor or TCU in terms of the overall body of work, but they have frontline players that can play with anybody. Greg Ward Jr. is an All-American candidate at quarterback. They have transfer. The ironic thing about them is they've really played the transfer market well, have a couple guys that were at Texas, a couple guys that were at other Big 12 programs that are going to play meaningful snaps for them. So it's not as if they don't have the talent. And you brought up the point, Nestor, for Houston, their whole season really rides on this week 1 game against Oklahoma. They win this, all of a sudden you're now looking at a scenario where they have thrown themselves in the thick of the playoff race before the playoff race has really even begun. Obviously, they're a team that would have to win every single game on their schedule, but playing Oklahoma week 1, playing Louisville late in the season. If they win both of those games, they will be every bit in the discussion. It's obviously going to depend on how other teams and other conferences play, but this is a huge weekend for Houston. You talk about something that could shake college football up within a few hours of that first Saturday. Houston beating Oklahoma would certainly qualify as that.
He is Aaron Torres. He covers college football at FoxSports.com, and you can follow his journey out on Twitter as well as his picture with the Heisman Trophy at Aaron_Torres. That's Torres as well. Last but not least for you, two questions for you. One, who's going to win the national championship?
I'm back and forth. I have Florida State and LSU in the national championship game. My hunch is I think Florida State might have the best defense in college football. That includes Alabama. LSU, though, Nestor, I felt like this since really last November. I think they're playing for something bigger than just this season. They're playing for Les Miles' job. I mean, we forget this now, but Les Miles was 1 quarter away from being fired during that Texas A&M game or immediately following that Texas A&M game. His players carried him off the field because they thought it was going to be his last game, okay? So people forget that.
I read the scrolls, believe me. I read the tweets, yes.
I tweet about it a lot because it cannot be undervalued. And so you have, by the way, a team that has national championship talent. You have 2, 3, 4, 5 guys on that roster that could have gone pro. In the case of a couple of them, could have been first-round draft picks. They came back, and I think it's because they realized that there is something really big at stake here. I just think that the combination of talent, of coaching, and of just the bigger picture stuff, that is why I have LSU, and I think they'll play Florida State for the title.
Who's your favorite team to watch this year, a team that might be on the come? And don't say Maryland.
Definitely Maryland, DJ Durkin. No, I mean, look, it's a tough question to ask. I mean, I'm more of an individual players guy, like Leonard Fournette. Every time LSU has the ball, I'm watching. Christian McCaffrey, certainly, obviously, that goes without saying. I'm trying to think of a team. A team that'll be really interesting is Texas, because Texas has a lot of really young personnel. They might be starting a true freshman at quarterback. And I'm just looking at them like they're really a year away from being a real contender, not just in the Big 12, but in the national championship race if they can get the quarterback situation figured out. So I think it'll be interesting, and I think it starts in week 1 when they play Notre Dame this Sunday night.
Aaron, I'll be following you out on Twitter. He is Aaron_Torres, college football at FoxSports.com. You can find me in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault anytime, anywhere, from anywhere in the world, including Germany, as well as our morning newspaper is going to hit your email inbox at 7 a.m. That's brought to you by Planet Fitness. And we will be texting out news here throughout the holiday. The Ravens are going to be cutting. The Orioles are going to be adding. I promise you, get on the WNST text service. It's free and easy and powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Great having you on, Aaron. I appreciate it, my brother.
It is good to be back. You have safe